All right, good Monday, everyone. Welcome to Mondays with Manny. I am your host, Manny Rodriguez, and this, of course, is a live cast. I have a live audience with me today. I really appreciate everybody's time and energy on this fine Monday morning. We are discussing common problems organizations face and how to deal with them using the science of behavior. Special thanks, of course, goes out to the sponsor of Mondays with Manny, Business Science Magazine, 305 Publishing, the OBM Alliance, and my teammates at Bueno Ventures. So today's topic I'm actually quite excited about because it's a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is around coaching and coaching in organizations to really unleash performance by supporting people through the art and science of coaching. And really what we're talking about is an individual or a group of individuals within a company taking on the responsibility and role of a coach to coach people through some challenging times, some hard things, some tasks, specific tasks, and getting them through that so that they, at the end, they can get really stellar results. To really hone in on coaching, if you were to Google coaching, you're going to get multi-billions of hits in the word coaching. So you got to be more specific, right? You could say performance coaching, you could say sports coaching, you could say dance coaching, right? There's all sorts of different coaches. The ones that we're going to specifically focus on is the role of a coach in the workplace, in the organization. Right? So this could be somebody in any department. They could be in the department of sales and customer service. They could be in operations. They could be in service delivery. Wherever they live, they serve a purpose, and that is to coach others to excel in performance. And I really racked my brain. I looked up a variety of different journal articles on coaching. I went to Harvard Business Review. They have a great deal of information around coaching. And I kept coming back to one particular book that fortunately a couple of friends of mine wrote, but it was geared towards teacher performance, meaning teachers in schools. But the tools themselves are really universal. You can apply them to any organization. So the book itself is called Deliberate Coaching, a toolbox for accelerating teacher performance. And it was written by Paul Gavati and Nick Weatherly, and they're going to love that I just plugged their book. But my ethics are in check. I get no benefit from that, except they give me big hugs. That's about it. So Deliberate Coaching by Paul Gavani and Nick Weatherly. And what I wanted to kind of hone in today for Mondays with Manny in our short time together is I wanted to share with you two of the tools in the toolbox, right? So the subtitle of this is a toolbox for accelerating teacher performance. So the two tools that I wanted to, and for the live audience, before I continue, I'm going to go ahead and put the link to Amazon where you can find the book if you're interested. So the two tools that I wanted to emphasize are as follows. The first one are the 8 W's of deliberate coaching. It looks something like that. And I'll go through the 8 W's. Now, what the 8 W's are is really a way to systematically plan and organize your coaching process, right? So it's really about how to deliberately focus and systematize your coaching process. So the 8 W's are the who. So who are you coaching? Which behaviors are linked to which goals and results? We'll come back to that in a little bit. The why are you choosing a particular coaching task? There should be a reason for that task versus other tasks, right? 4, when will you do the coaching? That sounds kind of strange, right? To note, but if you don't know when you're going to do it, it could happen at any time, and then meaning it'll never happen because other priorities will take over. So when are you going to do the coaching? Where are you going to do the coaching? The where is really important from the standpoint of if you do it in a public forum versus a private forum, one in their office versus your office. Okay, so that's important. The next one is what did you do? So what are you actually going to do in that coaching session? Are you going to be working off of a computer? Are you going to be working off of a worksheet? Are you going to be working off of some strategic plan or some business plan? Do you have a curriculum? Given that this is for teachers, are you going to work off some curriculum? So the what you're going to actually be doing should be spelled out in specificity. The last 2 W's are what happened. So this is after coaching has already occurred. The last 2 W's for deliberate coaching are what happened, what was the impact? So the impact on the individual who received coaching. right? So getting feedback from them is really important. So what happened as a result of the coaching? And then the last is why don't dot dot dot, meaning what will you do next? Why don't we meet in a couple of weeks to review progress? Or why don't you try these 3 things that we talked about in the coaching to see if it makes an impact, right? So those 2 W's, the what happened and the why don't dot dot dot, is really the follow-up to coaching as a result. So those were the 8 W's of deliberate coaching. And I really wanted to focus on that for 2 reasons. First is in my own experience working with companies and organizations want to implement some type of coaching system. The first thing that they have struggle with is putting a structure to it, right? And these guys did a great job, like really organizing their thinking in terms of this system, these 8 W's. It's actually probably the best that I've seen in a long time. It really just provides a really strong structure of how you're going to organize who's going to get coaching, where, et cetera, et cetera. So those 8 W's. So I'll go through them really quickly, just the headers, right? So who, which, why, when, where, what, okay? And then as a result, what happened and why don't dot, dot, dot. All right, so those are the 8 W's to deliberate coaching. Highly recommend thinking that through when you're going to implement coaching of any sort, and no matter what industry, you have a good structure in place. Now, I wanted to talk about the which a little bit because that brings me to the second tool. So the which in the 8 W's is which behaviors are linked to which goals and results. This is probably the trickiest part in the world of behavioral science, is really matching and lining up. I know what outcomes I'm trying to achieve, right? Whether it's in this case, this is about teachers, so student performance, right? So students getting good grades, passing their skills, their skill learning curriculum, etc. In the workplace, maybe it's doing great customer service. If you're in the service delivery side of things, maybe it's billable hours, right? So these are the business results, the outcomes, right? But then what behaviors lead to those? And in many cases, there's multiple behaviors that lead to those. But what are the critical ones that are linked to those goals? And the second tool that I wanted to share with all of you is what's called SMART pinpoints. Now, in the chat room, if you're familiar with SMART goals, let me know. I'm curious how many of you might be familiar with SMART goals, SMART. And while I'm asking that, just a little bit of an opening disclaimer I should have mentioned before. You might hear some background noise. Those are my kids doing their schoolwork. And my dogs aren't barking today, so that's good. But the kids are talking, so that's what you're hearing in the background. All right, so many of you heard about SMART goals. All right, so SMART goals, right, have a very clear definition. But here, what they did was took a page out of another prolific writer named Dr. Scott Geller. He is a organizational behavior management pioneer in our field. He's been around in the field of behavioral science for many, many years. He's a professor out of Virginia Tech. And he kind of redefined SMART goals a little bit to re-emphasize some of the finite nuances that we know and love in the world of behavioral science. So let's see if you can pick up on those nuances when I tell you what we mean by SMART pinpoints. So I wanted to emphasize SMART pinpoints because this is the best way to really hone in on which behaviors you're going to focus on and defining those to achieve those business results. So the S in SMART pinpoints is specific. So the more specificity you define those behaviors, the more likely you're going to actually observe those behaviors in action, right? So specificity, specific, is really about getting the results and the behaviors to achieve is very clear and observable. And the more specific you write them, the better. For those in the audience that are behavioral scientists, you know that we probably mean operational definitions. It's pretty close to the word specific. All right, let's go to M in SMART is motivational. Motivational. So that's a little different than in the original SMART goal definition, right? But what Scott Keller was really trying to get at here is that a SMART pinpoint of behavior that you're focusing on should actually be meaningful for the person doing the job, right? So motivational is about internal meaning for the person. If it's not worth their time and effort and they're not interested in doing the performance, they're probably not going to want to do it. right? So the motivation in SMART pinpoint is about the want. Do they want to exude that effort? The next one, A, is achievable. So this probably comes as no surprise. If they can't achieve it, they can't do it, right? So when we're defining a behavior that we want to see happen to achieve that business result, right? And we want to coach to that behavior. They have to be able to do it. They have to achieve it. And if they just run into one roadblock after another roadblock, then it's not achievable by definition. So that A is kind of our test. Is it actually achievable by the person doing the job? R is really a cool one. I only see this every once in a while. R is relevant. R is relevant. So relevancy to the performer and their job. And if you want to know if it's relevant to them or not, start with their job description. Start with their roles and responsibilities. If we're asking people to do something that's outside of their scope of work, then it's not going to feel very relevant to their job. They may do it. They may do it out of just sheer support to the organization, support to the coach, support to their boss. But if it's truly not relevant to them, it's probably going to take a backseat to other things that are relevant. So when we're going to do coaching, we want to make sure that the pinpoint, the behavior is really relevant. All right, and the last is T, and that's trackable. And for those that are familiar with SMART goals, you would have remembered this as part of the M in measurable. So it's very similar to measurable, right? It's trackable, meaning I can count it. I can track the performance, I can track the behavior over time to see if my coaching efforts are really making an impact on that behavior. All right. So that's the SMART acronym. That's what they call SMART pinpoints. So it's specific, motivational, achievable, relevant, and trackable. And that's by Dr. Scott Geller. And they brought it into this book because two things were different from previous versions of SMART goals. One is the motivational side, right? So we want to make sure people are motivated to do the behavior. And the other one is relevant to the job, relevant to their day-to-day responsibilities. So that's deliberate coaching. Coaching has been around for decades, right? For eons. And what I find more and more is happening today is managers, supervisors, all the way to executives are taking more of a coaching role, right? They're looking to coach people to accelerate their performance. They're looking for people to make sure that they're doing the right things the right way to achieve the right results. And coaching has become an enabler of all that. It's less punitive. There's no um, you know, disciplinary procedure being followed. Like it's all about a positive approach to performance. And that's what coaching is all about. So more and more organizations are unlocking coaching. They're using coaching more and more. And so I thought that was a relevant topic, especially in today's climate where many of us are having to work with each other virtually. And so coaching virtually is going to be really important so that you make this more of a positive experience versus a negative one. So if you're like me, you work from home, you're working virtually, and the last thing you want is this to be a very negative experience, right? It has to go well. So coaching could be really helpful. And so we got the two tools that we talked about today from the book, right? The 8 W's, that's all about setting up your coaching process, and then SMART pinpoints. And that's really honing in on what behaviors and results you're trying to achieve. So that was my Mondays with Manny for today. Like I said, if you were to Google coaching systems, coaching process, you name your adjective, verb, adverb, whatever you want, coaching, you'll get billions of hits. I would recommend Harvard Business Review has a lot of great articles on coaching. Some of them are free, by the way. There's deliberate coaching. Books like this are very good. And if you want more resources, I would highly recommend going to either the International Coaching Federation, ICF. That's another good resource for all sorts of things around coaching. And then I don't know what the right organization is nowadays, but back in the maybe 1990s, early 2000s, executive coaching certifications were a big thing. And they still are now, but back then they were huge. And executive coaching certifications, these organizations would provide all sorts of resources, white papers, articles, etc., all around coaching, from coaching processes and coaching tips, etc. So if you're interested in that, you can even Google executive coaching, and that'll help you get even more information. Okay. So that's it for Mondays with Manny. For the live audience, stick around. We're going to do the live Q&A. That won't be recorded. And I'm happy to answer any and all questions. For those that dialed in and watched the recording, thank you very much for watching. And tune in next time for Mondays with Manny.